back to another episode of Build or Rebuild, where we take NHL and NBA teams that we feel need to build or rebuild, and we offer our takes of what they should do this offseason. So for today, we've got Chicago Bulls.
Chicago Bulls. I look at this team and they rebuilt after the Derrick Rose era.
Yeah.
Which they kind of had to do, but it was very half-heartedly done.
Yeah, they never, and I don't think they fully prepared for what life would be without Derrick Rose, and they tried to afterwards and tried to regain their footing, and it just didn't really work out for them.
I think they expected too much of the guys they drafted in Markkanen and Levine, who they traded for primarily, but they just simply weren't enough.
They've got a lot of interesting pieces, and there's similar to what Portland, the one that we covered before, there's a lot of different directions that this team could go.
Yeah.
Because this isn't a bad team by any means.
No.
This is an underachieving team.
It's going to be a perennial playoff team, or playoff contender, but not championship contender. I don't see how, with the roster they have now, would they ever compete. Because there's not much room for their young guys to grow, right?
Yeah.
Like you have Kobe White, and then... I mean, maybe Williams could grow into something, but that's about it. There isn't much left to look for. And guys like Markkanen and Levine are probably on their way out. And if you trade those guys out, you're probably going to have to get rid of Thaddeus Young and Nikola Vucevic as well.
It'll be interesting to see how they approach not only Levine, but how they approach Lauri Markkanen, because he's a restricted free agent this year.
Yeah.
Whether they... I assume they're going to tender an offer to him.
Yep.
But the Bulls are also in a spot where, after acquiring Zach LaVine a few years ago and after acquiring Nikola Vucevic at the trade deadline, they don't have a lot of cap space to work with.
No.
You know, they're sitting at around $98 million in cap, or about $99 million. Cap's about 109, 110.
Yep.
So they have in and around $10 million to work with this year. I don't really know how you build this team anymore with this type of roster or with this type of cap space.
I like rebuilding, and again with Levine and Markkanen looking like they're on their way out, I think it's a good opportunity, because at that point all you have left to get rid of is Vucevic, and I think you'd do that and try again.
Now, it would be if they wanted to rebuild, those would be the names they'd have to get rid of. Obviously Levine, because he would have, at least one first round pick tied to him.
Yeah.
And that's something that after the draft lottery this year, they don't have.
Yeah.
So their pick was top 5 protected, and it got sent to Orlando because it did not fall in the top 5 or was top 4 protected, I think. Yeah, that was it. So it'll be tough to it'll be interesting, because if they rebuild, they cannot do it with Zach LaVine. It's definitely not a retool. It's either they go with what they have and go
one or the other for sure.
They go all out, or because there's no short-term fix that you can do with the financial bind that they're in.
No, they can't go out and get a big free agent. So I think in their best interest, it'd be good to start again.
Yeah.
For now, you have Patrick Williams, you have Kobe Young,
Kobe White.
Kobe White. Everything else, or everybody else, you can let walk or trade away. Yeah,
because those are really the only players that you can get jazzed about there, that aren't either disgruntled or that you can actually rebuild around. So it's...
Yeah. And is there any news in staffing for them?
Staffing for them, no. As far as I know, there's no updates on them.
So do you think their season, who do you blame there for the underachievement?
It didn't help that once they got Nikola Vucevic, for the 11 days after they got him, Zach LaVine went out in health and safety protocols.
Yeah.
So they never really had a chance to see... Obviously, they played together, but they didn't have a chance right off the bat to see what that team was, and that set them back, not having LaVine for 11 days, because that's where the slump started to happen, because they were 7th in the Eastern Conference, set to make the play-in.
Yeah.
And then after that...
They kind of dropped off. Yeah, they were in a playoff spot.
Yeah.
And with the way the playoffs have gone, they could have had a decent run.
They could have. And that's the thing too. That's the encouraging part of if they wanted to go for this
and run it back.
Because
they can, I believe they can keep everybody here.
Yeah.
Except for Markkanen. Like, I think you can convince Levine to stick around.
Yeah.
If not, you can trade for an equal asset to replace him.
Yeah. And that's also
so
something.
they can run it back and be a solid team.
And that's something too. If they let Markkanen walk in restricted free agency, they get picks out of that as well. And that's something too that you can add to this team if you but you have to convince Levine and Vucevic that this is where, you know, that there is going to be success on the horizon. So I would honestly, like you're saying rebuild. I'm going to say they should really do their best to try to make this work because the Bulls have been in a rebuilding state, like we said before, since Derrick Rose.
Yeah. And down. Before that, it was since Michael Jordan retired. So I think it's one of those things where how many times can you rebuild? Like, what more is it going to take? Like, it doesn't seem like they've done it well in the first place. So I think they need to try to make do with what they have because like we've seen in the playoffs this year, anything can happen. You know, a lot of people thought the Brooklyn Nets and the Los Angeles Lakers would have been the finals, and that's not the case anymore. So I'm not saying the Bulls are going to win this next year, but I'm just saying, you know, they're crazy. It doesn't
crazier
hurt to
things
try and
have
compete.
happened. Charlotte Hornets made the play in this year.
Yeah, and Atlanta is in the conference finals. And
New York Knicks
could make it to the finals.
New York Knicks weren't supposed to go anywhere. They finished fourth. Like if you overachieve and you find ways, there are ways to win. Teams just have to find them. And I think that with Vucevic and Levine, they're capable of doing that.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting. See what they do this offseason. Well, in that case, that'll do it for this episode of Build or Rebuild. If you liked the episode, give it a like down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any of our other Build or Rebuild or off-season series uploads. And with that, that'll do it for today. We'll see you next episode. Peace.